Horrible people skills. Horrible people skills. Murder spree.
Hello, fellow Araxians. Commander Sirius here. Welcome to advanced training of the Harasser. The Harasser in Planetside fills the role of light, fast attack vehicle. Can be kitted out with anti-infantry, anti-vehicle, or anti-air weaponry, and allows for a weaponless driver, a top gunner, and someone sitting in the back seat, which could be a max or a repair engineer in most situations. This platform depends heavily on the driver and gunner being in sync. The gunner knowing when it's a good point in the driver's maneuvers to reload, so that they are ready to go when the driver gives them a shot. Very recently, they increased the Harasser's nanite cost from 150 to 300, so it's not a complete throwaway vehicle anymore. You want to keep it up. I've only racked up 100 kill streaks a couple times, and both of them were in a Harasser. So, fellow Araxians, I'm going to start off by showing you my loadouts, and then we'll dive into some theory on Harasser driving and gunning. Okay, soldiers, here's my Harasser. You're going to see 7 available slots here because I have a membership, but to be honest, I use the first 4 99% of the time. Now, the first thing I want to take you through is the Harasser vehicle CERTS. Most of these are just about your utility, defense, and performance slot, but there is one important one at the top, and that is your NFI 2000 Turbo. Having turbo on a vehicle is just so freeing. I wish I had it on my Lightning and my MBTs, to be honest. And the Harasser comes with turbo by default. This will just improve it a little bit. It takes a few certs to get it maxed out, but if you're going to be a Harasser driver, you want to top this one off as quick as you can. The smokescreen is not necessarily bad, but the extreme utility of the other two just beats it in almost every situation. Fire suppression is great for getting out of some tight spots, and allows you to top off your vehicle while you're in chase. Gate shield diffuser is awesome for breaching amp stations, tech plants, whatever you need to get into. But if you haven't played in a while, they actually added some functionality to it, which makes it a really awesome choice. If you max it out when you turn on your gate shield diffuser, you won't take damage from collisions. If you're someone that likes to do some ramming with your Harasser, that's the choice for you. Okay, moving on. Now we're into the defense slot. The 2 slots I use here are composite armor and vehicle stealth. Now, long ago, Mine Guard was actually a really good option, but nowadays you have implants to deal with that. So I can use Sweeper HUD on my engineer, and then take advantage of being invisible on the minimap until I fire with stealth, or some extra durability with composite armor. And then finally, moving on down into the performance slot. Looking at these, when you see Scrapper, think traction. When you see Surger, think hill climbing. When you think Racer, think fast. Here's the thing, the Harasser is a pretty squirrely vehicle. And you've got Nitro for a speed boost when you need to get out of a pickle. I run Scrapper on all my loadouts because it maximizes my maneuverability. Now, with A7, you can also unlock something called the Daredevil chassis. You won't see that in your certs. But if you want to be a little more acrobatic in the air, you can go for that Mimi performance slot. Okay, now let's dive into the loadouts. My first slot is the Marauder. This is the equivalent to the PPA on the VS and the Canister on the NC. Equivalent's probably the wrong word, but the faction variant. I noticed I hadn't maxed out my magazine size on it, so I corrected that. And you can upgrade your ammo stock as much as you feel you have the certs for. For the utility slot, I use fire suppression on this loadout. Ramming is not as big of a concern for this weapon that focuses more on anti-infantry. In the defense slot, I use composite armor. You're going to be up close and personal with heavy assaults rockets. Stealth isn't going to save you here. And then as always, and especially with these kind of CQC engagement weapons, I stick with the Scrapper chassis. In my second slot, I have the Vulcan. This is the faction-specific CQC weaponry, counterpart to the Aphelion on VS and the Molnir on NC. This thing shreds vehicles up close. It works, but its low projectile velocity makes it a little bit difficult to fight infantry with. Does well against Liberators, but not very good against ESFs. A longer reload can be timed and dealt with, but sometimes you just need 10 extra bullets in the magazine, so I maximize the magazine size. And bump your ammo capacity up as much as you feel like you have the CERTS for. If you aren't going to run ammo printer, this becomes more important. In my utility slot, I go with fire suppression. Sometimes I will mess around with Gate Shield Diffuser for the CQC loadout for some RAM potential, but that extra health boost saves me so often, I generally stick with it. Now, I love stealth with the Vulcan. You can creep right up behind a tank and unload a magazine on them before they can really react. If you use this, though, you really are a glass cannon, because you're going to be in very close proximity. If you give it an angle, they're going to get shots off on you, so make sure you've done enough damage before they can start shooting you. And I round it out with the Scrapper chassis for maneuverability. Next slot, I have my Halberd loadout. This is the non-faction specific long-range AV option. Zoom choice, I think, is a very user preference type of thing. I max out the reload speed and get a little extra ammo. In the utility slot, I use fire suppression again. And on this loadout, I switch over to stealth in the defense slot. In all my AV hunting loadouts, I really like using stealth. Many engagements can be determined by who gets first shot. And being able to maneuver into a flanking position without being noticed can win you a lot of battles. And then my final heavily used loadout slot is the Kobalt. Now, the Kobalt's always been a good weapon, but at launch, the Marauder was straight up overpowered. It was the better anti-infantry choice in most situations. Now, the Marauder got nerfed, so it's sort of in a little different niche now. The Marauder does less damage against infantry, but more damage against vehicles, so it can kind of perform in both roles. The Kobalt can't do any damage to heavy armored vehicles, but is arguably the most powerful anti-infantry weapon on the Harasser right now. The Bulldog and the Basilisk also being some good options. Again, on these CQC anti-infantry loadouts, I don't find a whole lot of use for stealth, so throw some composite armor on there with fire suppression and go mow down some infantry. Now, I'm going to briefly take you through my other loadouts, because if you don't have membership, here's how I like to set it up. An anti-infantry loadout, a CQC AV loadout, a long-range AV loadout, and then one anti-air loadout. What I'll do then is on the anti-infantry loadout, I will change between the Bulldog, the Basilisk, the Kobalt, or the Marauder as I see fit, whatever I think will match that situation the best. So in the fifth slot, I have the default weapon loadout. Guys, do not underestimate the Basilisk. It is a jack of all trades that is a great learning weapon. Next, I have the Gatekeeper. It's a nice long-range weapon, but it did get nerfed, and I prefer the alpha damage of the Halberd now. And then finally, I put my anti-air loadout in the last slot, Ranger or Walker. Okay, fellow Harassians, I hope I gave you some good ideas for your loadouts. Let's jump into the action. Now, advanced harassering is really a combination of two disciplines. One of them is driving and one of them is gunning. And both of them are a lot of fun in their own right, in my opinion. Obviously, being the driver, while you get tons of experience, you don't necessarily get the cha-ching of all the kills, and your KDR isn't huge. That glory is reserved for the gunner, but the joy of just completely faking out an enemy tanker and just handing your gunner a layup is all the reward you'll need. Now, having spent a lot of time as both a gunner and a driver in the Harasser, both roles have to carry their weight in any engagement, but I find the CQC engagements, whether it's with CQC AV or using anti-infantry weapons in general, the weight generally rests on the driver's shoulder to create awesome positioning, and the gunner's usually close enough that it's hard to miss. Once you get into long-range AV weaponry like the Halberd or the Gatekeeper, then a lot of the impetus rests on the gunner's shoulders to pull off some clutch shots to win some of those engagements. When driving, situational awareness is really your biggest asset. I see a few heavy assaults with rocket launchers around, But I'm also seeing that Sunder is on fire, so I know if I give him a few more easy shots, he's going to pop it, and then I can dodge out of there. I started my engagement coming down the hill from C Point, so I know there's no Sunderers over there. I feel pretty confident on that side. I feel like I've got a green light 270 degrees around me, so I'm focusing on the 90 degrees where I know the enemies are. Remember, on my Vulcan loadout, I am running stealth, so I can take my time sneaking into some of these CQC positions, because I know I don't show up till my gunner starts shooting. But I am a glass cannon, so you don't get to hang out once they're returning fire on you. Get some damage in, retreat, and then maybe try to circle around to pick them off. In this case, either a friendly finished that lightning off, or he hit a minor bump in the road and it immediately exploded. Now, while you're driving the Harasser, it is really you that picks the targets rather than your gunner. My process is sort of one of probing. I'm kind of watching where the bulk of the enemies are. I obviously can't go right into their field of view. You don't want 80 people shooting at you. But I'm looking for edges of the terrain where I might get a shot on one of them. Here we found this lightning loose from the pack, and I already figured out his sensitivity is a little too low. So I can do a loop around him without getting shot. One easy kill. But now I'm seeing 3 more lightnings in my field of view, so the first thing I'm going to do is retreat to some terrain features. Small terrain features are massive for Harasser defensive maneuvering. And I wait. I see one Vanguard break from the pack. Now I've got an isolated scenario where even though there's 10 enemy tanks on the hill, I'm mostly 1v1 versus this guy, so I'm going to try to give my gunner a few shots on him. But I am not greedy. When I see that lightning coming in to rescue his fellow Vanguard, I am out of there immediately looking for defensive maneuvers, and I'll try to swing back later on to get some kills. Back to the safety of these terrain features where I can break the lock-on sight for a minute and run the Lightning and Vanguard around in circles. We'll turn the corner, get repaired back up, and then we'll be back at it. Now, team repair etiquette. Obviously, if you're gunning, you still want to be engineer, so when you stop, you can get 2 repair tools, topping you off quick. For me, the rule is the gunner always hops back in first at about 85 or 90%. The driver gets to make the call when the Harasser starts moving again. Maybe the driver sees a threat and needs to get out of there fast, or sometimes there's just latency that can be awkward if the gunner stays out till the Harasser is 100%. I've turboed off without my gunner before because they were trying to rep to 100%, and all of a sudden there was a threat where I wanted to dodge a shell. So don't feel bad, gunners. You're not cheating your driver by not staying out there in an act of solidarity. This is about being an efficient killing machine. Gunners get in the Harasser first. Let the drivers top it off as much as he sees fit. For the same reason, it's also ideal that the driver always pulls the Harasser. Or if there's a nanite issue and the gunner needs to pull a Harasser and then pull a flash immediately after, so that the driver can claim that Harasser. If you are using the unlock feature, you can have awkward delays where the gunner ends up in the driver's seat. Try to move away from vehicles when they're about to die. Carcasses are a bigger threat than the vehicle itself sometimes. Drivers, you should never be full on forward 100% of the time. My goal here as we approach this is to give my driver a shot all the time. And if I just hit all these bumps at full throttle, it's going to throw me pitching all over the place. I'm trying to set it up so that as I navigate the terrain, it's still a pretty smooth shot for my gunner. Here's another look at that. This Harasser is a one-man Harasser, so he's not a threat to us other than he could escape. It's just a question of which driver can navigate the hilly terrain without flipping or spinning their Harasser the worst. I was able to keep mine on its wheels. He went upside down, so we won. Coming up CQC with a group of infantry is about the most difficult spot you can be in. A couple decimators and you're a goner, especially if they get your backside. So the key thing is to try not to lose your momentum. I usually reserve my turbo not for going super fast, but for accelerating very fast. If I have to do a quick backup maneuver, I tap that turbo to get me going at full speed again almost immediately. And then myself, I run repair grenade bandolier on my driving engineer. So in sticky situations, I can tap that fire suppression, get out for a second, throw a repair grenade on, and then find a better place to full repair while I make it out of there alive. Another thing you need to know as a driver is blocking. how to cut off your adversary's escape routes. And sometimes you just go to that side and shoot bullets at them to scare them in the other direction. That's kind of your gunner's job. But in this case, I saw a guy pop a harasser out, and really he's probably trying to pick up his gunner in the bottom of the biolab. I need to make sure he can't make it back into safety, so I'm going to position myself between him and the shield. And he could turbo and sandwich me into the shield, but I'm going to counter with my turbo, give him a little ram bump, and I actually stole the kill on that one. Who says drivers can't get kills? There's plenty of road kills and ram kills out there. Now guys, I'm fortunate in being in mercenaries, there's almost always someone that wants to drive or gun something. But at the same time, sometimes I like just going out there and finding a random. I think most randoms out there would be happy to gun a Harasser, just a lot of times they got in one, and then it gets locked because the driver was waiting for his gunner to arrive or something like that.
Get a beacon on it.
So they're hesitant to get in the guns, not sure if they're really supposed to do that. But at the same time, especially if you can find a newer player, you can end up giving them the ride of your life, and as a driver, it's a little bit more of a challenge for you, because they may be a little bit greener in terms of gunning one of these platforms. So it's a real good practice for you in terms of maneuvering to safety, giving them easy shots, because you really need to set the shots up for them very well. Many times handling the repairs yourself. And most of all, sometimes it just teaches patience when you feel like you've really set up a shot and they're looking elsewhere. But some of the most memorable moments I have in Planetside are with people that I don't really know or never talk to. Just picking up a random and going for it. Again here, as the vultures descend, make sure you don't get into that fray, man. I was able to get close enough to net my gunner the kill, but if I was in the mix of all those, I probably would have blown up from contact.
I think they're short.
Now here, when I'm back into hot pursuit, I'm spending a lot of time to watch that turret. What is that lightning driver looking at? Is he looking at me, the aircraft, another harasser?
No,
I'm going to try to stay straight and level when he's looking elsewhere, and then I'm going to do some hard maneuvers when he starts looking at me. You can see that turbo there gave me a nice zigzag juke and was able to avoid one of his shots. Now I'm kind of in trouble, but at least I'm not showing my rear, so I can stay safe. We tried the ditch, but we got him.
Honestly, tech plans, if you have
GG's. Thanks for gunning for me out there, Sam Donovan. Okay, now let's jump over to the other half of harassering, gunning. Now every weapon is going to be a little bit unique here. On the Vulcan, it is a spin-up weapon. So when I switch targets, I'm actually not going to stop firing. In the perfect scenario, you're holding the trigger all the way through the clip as long as those shots are on target. I'm obviously trying to time my reloads to trigger them when there's nothing to shoot at. Here I was a little bit off, thinking we were going to be behind that hill for longer, but we're right back in the game. Tanks are generally a bigger threat than Sunderers, so I'm definitely going to work on getting those down before the easy free kills, if the target is available. You will find that there's delay between death and explosion when you kill a tank. If you're clearly hitting it but you stop getting hit markers, you can move on to the next target because it will blow up in a moment. Now here it's getting a little bit busy. It's always a tough balance of when do you switch over to the third seat and start repairing. In general, the best way to keep yourself alive is just to kill the other guy to make sure you get plenty of rounds on target. But if you start seeing red in that right side of your screen, you got to make sure and perform some emergency repairs. This harasser lives to fight another day. Okay guys, now if you watch the stream, you guys know the rule. What do you do if Little Talent says, get in the vehicle? You get in the vehicle. So this fight is at Indar Kamare, guys. And the north side of this base is dominated by whoever has vehicle control. Or I guess I should say, if the attackers have vehicle control on the north side, they win. If they don't, they lose. The infantry handles the south end, the triple stack end of the base. Now, it can be semi-rough terrain. They do have a shot at you while you're deep from behind their spawn shield. So this is where you really get to practice as a gunner your tracking when you're bouncing over terrain. Now, I have my gunner sensitivity on my vehicles higher than my infantry sensitivity. I don't like that. It makes it tough for my muscle memory to try to transition between them. But I find the vehicle moving at high speeds, sometimes I have to rapidly do 180-degree turns in order to track my targets. And my infantry sensitivity just doesn't realistically allow for that. So I do lose some accuracy with that transition, but I usually make up for it with being able to get some kills while I'm bouncing around in rough terrain. So by bringing this force multiplier to the map here, it gives the enemies two choices. Either they have to ignore you and just go around to the other side. That funnels them into a little more of a choke point because you know where they're all coming from. Or they end up focusing you, which your job then is to just absorb damage, repair, and your allies are the ones that get to make the kills. In this case, I was already LA before a little talent pulled the vehicle. He's working overtime, even being engineer while I'm shooting. In this type of CQC battling, there never would be an opportunity for me to be not manning the gun anyways, so it works out just fine for me to not be the engineer class. This sort of fight really puts on display the true power of the Kobalt. I find that it is significantly more powerful than all of the high explosive options right now. The splash of the Bulldog can be pretty tempting, but in these situations, its range is limited, and it would be tough to track these targets over some of this difficult terrain. The laser accuracy of the Kobalt is really the best option here. So as the time winds out on this one, we definitely did our job. For a few seconds there, we made it down into the red, absorbing some damage, but as they try to make their last push, they no longer have time to actually AV us down, and then it just ends up being a few free kills at the end. As always, remember to thank your driver, especially in these CQC situations. In my opinion, this scoreboard is far more a reflection on talent skill driving than my shooting, because he was able to get us in the positions and hold us there alive so I could get the work done. Okay guys, I'm going to bring you a little bit more footage of long-range AV gunning on a Harasser a little bit later, but this should definitely get you well on your way to kitting out your Harasser, how to drive it, how to gun it. It can be a bit daunting at first getting into it because they are so squishy, but once you figure out that delicate dance of staying just out of the enemy's reach, whether with a little slope and a hill or far enough away, you will be harassing with the best of them. Serious soldiers, you make my world turn. Thank you for enlisting in the Army and helping us rise. There's a few of you that joined recently who are not rendered on this list yet. Big thank you to you. I will get this updated soon. That's all for now, fellow Araxians. As I do at some of these advanced guys, I'm going to leave you with a little bit of raw footage. I have a tidbit here where we dueled a Colossus. What a better cap to the Harasser advanced training video anyways. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Commander Sirius signing off. And until next time, I will see you Planetside. Talk about the Vanguard, or is there a Mag Rider near us? Yeah, copy that. Yeah, it's the pink guy you gotta watch for.